Yeah, I wanted to say a few words, given the news over the last week of the appalling criminality of PC David Carrick, sort of a ghastly case from the Met's history. And I want to talk about that briefly and what we're doing to fix the issues that it highlights. Obviously, you're all aware that from sort of day one, high standards has been top of my agenda for my commissionership. I've been very honest about the fact that I'm sort of pleased to have tens of thousands of great men and women, and I'm always mindful that they listen to my words, as do the people of London who we serve. And we're all equally horrified that we have hundreds in policing who shouldn't be here. And David Carrick is an example of an awful example of that. I must sort of reiterate here my sincere apologies to his victims for our failings. He should not have been a police officer. That's very obvious. A range of poor policy and poor decision making. He shouldn't have been a police officer, and we failed. And we haven't applied the same sense of ruthlessness to guarding our own integrity that we routinely apply to confronting criminals, and I'm deeply sorry for that. I think we failed as investigators, where we should have been more intrusive and joined the dots over his repeated misogyny over decades. And as leaders, our mindset should have been more determined to spot and root out such a misogynist. So as I say, I apologise to his victims, and I want to say sorry to all the women across London who feel let down by this and whose trust in policing is shaken by this. I want to talk about three things that we're doing. I want to talk about action, about review, and about acceleration. So about action, I promised action from day one. 4 months ago, I set out that we'd be ruthless at rooting out those who corrupt our integrity. We've increased the resources in our Department of Professional Standards significantly. We've established an anti-corruption and abuse command, and we've launched the first ever public appeal line through Crime Stoppers, the Crime Stoppers Police Integrity Hotline. And we're getting sort of tens of calls a week to that are leading us to look at new cases. Some of those turn out to be malicious, but some of them turn out to be substantive, and those are generating new caseload. And I think in some ways, the sort of tragedy of the situation we find ourselves in, we are leading the way. It's interesting that even though this is a Met appeal, 1 in 3 of the calls coming through roughly are for other forces that we're passing information on as well. So I think we're sort of, through our challenges, we're helping the rest of the policing confront some issues as well. That's some of the action we're taking so far. I want to talk about review and redress. Clearly, in terms of this particular case, the Home Secretary, I think, has rightly suggested that Lady Eilish Angelini widens the scope of her review to include this case, and we'll support that fully. In terms of things that we're doing, I want to talk about Operation Onyx and about use of data to review the vetting of all officers and staff. So in terms of Operation Onyx, or Project Onyx, what is very clear, isn't it, is that if we haven't been tough enough in our decision-making previously, you have to look back at previous cases and say, are there other cases that we got wrong, where we decided somebody was going to stay in the organisation, and in hindsight, that's wrong. So we've cast the net very wide. If you look at, so we've looked at last decade, officers and staff who have had an allegation which has any hint of sexual misconduct or domestic abuse. So these range from sort of less serious allegations that are sort of largely sort of verbal, for example, all the way through to serious sexual assault allegations. Every one of them has been previously investigated and dealt with as either criminality or misconduct, and come to a position where those people remain in the organisation. What we have to work out is, did we get those decisions right? Some of the reporting in the papers is this is 1,000 new cases. Not 1,000 new cases. It's reviewing old cases. And given what we have found so far with the cases that have come to light, like Carrick, we have to assume that whilst I'd be confident that many of the cases we got right, we have to accept that we'll probably find many cases we got wrong, and there'll be people there that we need to have a fresh look at. That might be about their vetting, that might be about reopening investigations. There's all sorts of actions we might take, but the first thing is to systematically review that. And that's a massive piece of work to do that thoroughly. The second piece of review and redress work that we're doing is around a refreshed look at vetting. So members might sort of remember from different conversations you've had, but whilst the Police National Computer has criminal records, criminal convictions on it, and we're confident we know all the officers who have criminal convictions, and people shouldn't be too troubled necessarily about that in itself, because if someone's got a caution as a 13-year-old for possession of cannabis, that's not going to rule them out being a police officer. So there's lots of good reasons why people have been there as well as bad reasons. But more importantly, the Police National Database, PND, has a much wider intelligence set of arrests and other incidents that go beyond convictions. So we've washed the data. Technical people understand what this means better than I do. We've washed all of our data, of our personnel data, so all of our people, officers and staff, against the PND to look, are there officers or staff who've had contact with the police that may be troubling that we don't know about? Now, you do that wash and you get a big pile of potential positives, which will include positives and false positives. And then that creates a big manual process to sift through those hits, and that's what we're working on at the moment. And that's that refreshed vetting approach that I've heard talked about. I just wanted to explain in a bit more detail there. And that's the tactic that we're the first people to do it at scale, and that's the tactic that the Home Secretary has now asked that all forces do that tactic as well. On Monday, I spent a day with professional standards teams across 2 or 3 buildings across London, and the positive thing in all this, all the people in there, they're just ordinary police officers who happen to have moved into those roles, some recently, some long time ago. Their passion and commitment to take this on was really uplifting. The last thing I want to say was about accelerating, trying to find faster ways to deal with this. Louise Casey commented on the speed of our cases, and we're trying to improve that. We are unduly restricted by the nature of our regulations, and that concerns me, and it's great that the Home Secretary and Prime Minister have commissioned a rapid review of some of the rules about dismissals and unsatisfactory performance. But regardless of that, we're trying to find other levers ourselves where we can stretch the existing use of the law a bit further and push the boundaries on that to go as fast as possible in what we're doing. But if I step back just to finish off, you will see progress from us step by step as we chase more trust, less crime and high standards, which I'm focusing on here. We must improve dramatically for London. But lifting the stone and revealing painful truths will not be resolved overnight, and I mustn't pretend it will do, and I hope you understand that can't be done. We have to prepare for more painful stories as we confront the issues that we face. We've discussed before the systemic failings that create these problems of these officers who corrupt our integrity, and as we put in more resource, more assertive tactics, as we're more open to people reporting incidents to us from within and from without the organisation, as we more determinedly take on these cases, it will tackle the problems that we face, but it won't be rapid, and it will be painful. And in that context, we need your support and the support of people of London. Please don't lose heart as we confront these issues, as we do this necessary and painful work to finally confront those and rid the organisation of those who corrupt our integrity. Thank you, Chair.